Before we start the show this week, we wanted to take a quick second to tell you about a new initiative we're introducing in the podcast, which is our Talking Cars donation program. For those that don't know, CR is a nonprofit, and we're able to do all of the work we do, including anonymously buying our test cars and producing this show through memberships to our website and magazine, as well as through donations. What the Talking Cars donation program will do is allow loyal Talking Cars fans to show support for the podcast, assist in supporting the costs of producing the podcast, as well as support all the work CR does to keep consumers safe. You'll be able to contribute either as a one-time donation or on a monthly basis. Even $5 a month really helps. Go to cr.org/give-talking-cars to find out more. In any event, we'll keep delivering Talking Cars each and every week. Again, go to cr.org/give-talking-cars to find out more. Thanks for watching and enjoy the show.
On today's episode, we give our first impressions of the 2021 Chevrolet Trailblazer, share a list of the best used cars for teen drivers, and what vehicle would we bring with us on a trip to Mars? Next on Talking Cars. Hi, and welcome back. I'm Mike Quincy.
I'm John Lincove.
And I'm Ryan Pizlakowski.
So, a quick question for John and Ryan. When you tell people that you work for Consumer Reports, do you always get asked the same question? Are you the guys that crash test cars?
I have been asked that.
It is something that people think that that's one of the things we do, and the immediate question is like, and after you crash them, what do you do with them? So
that's as if you have anything left. So actually, what we've got going today for today's podcast is an awesome announcement. Consumer Reports and the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. Now that's the group that actually does the crash testing of cars, the premier crash testers in all of the industry. Anyway, our two organizations are teaming up to come up with a recommended list of safe, reliable, and affordable used cars for teen drivers. And this is the first time that CR and the IIHS have teamed up together. We're thinking about, we're taking the combined resources and knowledge. Consumer Reports, physically test cars, handling, braking, acceleration, whatnot. We have lots of reliability data. And of course, no one crash tests cars like the IIHS. So it seemed like a natural to come together and put our resources and come up with this awesome list. So we've come up with about 65 cars, used cars ranging from about $5,300 to just under $20,000. And we realize that not everybody can afford a new car. I mean, the new cars always have the most available safety equipment on it, but really it's not within everybody's budget to be able to afford it. So Ryan, can you take us through some of the criteria that went into creating the list of recommended cars?
Yeah, so no sports cars or cars with too much horsepower, excessive horsepower. It's just, there's an opportunity for maybe some misuse there. However, we said also no mini cars, no cars under 2,750 pounds, which is kind of funny because I just said not too much horsepower, but you also don't want too little horsepower. So some of these little cars actually can't get out of their own way fast enough. And if you're merging onto a busy highway, that could actually become a little bit of a safety issue. You want to get up to speed with adequate horsepower, we would say. And then, no big heavy vehicles for obvious reason. They're just a little bit clumsier. They're harder to maneuver. The braking distances can be longer. It's just clumsier. So it's kind of funny as we go through that list. Not that we'll go through the whole list, but you'll see all these cars are more medium-sized vehicles. There's nothing really tiny and nothing enormous. Mm-hmm. And that's just physics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And John, what were some of the other requirements to make the list?
Well, what's interesting is, the list of the best cars, particularly for teen drivers, is that, like you said, they have to be reliable and they have to be safe, but they all have to have standard electronic stability control. And it's a feature that most people now take for granted in the sense that it's been out for so many years. We're talking about more advanced safety systems now that are on the cutting edge and coming into cars. But electronic stability control, is going to keep the vehicle under control and prevent it from a skidding situation. Kind of the tail sliding out or the car driving straight off a road when the road bends. So you have to have above average reliability according to Consumer Reports member surveys. Average or better scores for emergency handling, because we conduct emergency handling tests on all of the vehicles that we evaluate. It's basically what's called a double lane change. And if you can envision you're driving down the street and a child runs out in front of you, or a deer runs out in front of you, you're going to swerve out of the way in the other lane. But you're going to want to jump back into that travel lane so that you don't hit an oncoming vehicle. So that's an emergency handling test that we do and make sure a vehicle's controllable through those situations. Like Ryan said, braking distances are key. Dry braking distances of less than 145 feet in our tests. And then also good crash test ratings from the IIHS. And there is another group that crash test cars. The government does, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and their tests aren't as severe. But you still have to get 4 or 5 stars in the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration safe car evaluation. So, if it's rated, they have to have that. And that's what we do to really cull down the list to something that is manageable and that people can use to make their research for a car for a teen, but also for themselves.
Right. And that's actually a good point. And this entire story and the list of all these cars are at consumerreports.org. And we can't go through every car on the list. But Ryan and John, so if you had to pick a few of your favorites and maybe even talk about the cars that you drove when you were teenagers.
Looking at that list, the first car on the list actually resonates with me, the Mazda 3. A smaller car, super fun to drive, nimble, good, nice quick steering. It's front-wheel drive, but it should be plenty good for, a new driver. You can put snow tires on it if you need to. And then it's a little more money, but I saw the 3 Series was on there. And the 3 Series is near and dear to my heart. My very first car was an 86 BMW 3 Series, 325e. And it was actually, my dad was a mechanic most of his life, and he would always end up with these stray cars at the garage. And he brought it home one day, and he was driving it for a while, and I just fell in love with it before I could even drive. It was a manual, no ABS, no stability control, a crank sunroof. The seat was stuck in one position. I was able to slide it up, but the seat back was stuck in one position. And I absolutely loved the car. I fell in love with driving. It taught me how to drive, I would say, a more pure way. In the winter, that thing was a little loose in the rear end, and
I was going to say,
a blast.
Yeah, the purity of driving a rear-wheel drive car in Connecticut in the wintertime.
Yeah, it was a different day and age, I guess. But this 3 Series is obviously a much newer. It had all the modern safety stuff in it.
Excellent. John, I'm sure you've got a different perspective. What's your choices, and what did you drive growing up?
I tried to keep my list under $10,000. So the Subaru Legacy or Outback, 2013 or newer, around $7,500 to $8,500. Honda Accord sedan, $9,200. That's a 2013 or newer, or a Volkswagen Jetta, a little bit of a sportier option than the Subarus, maybe on par with the Honda Accord, 2016 to 2018. I thought that these are vehicles that there are enough made of them, out there that you'll find some very hard driven examples, but you also find some that might not be driven as hard, but there's also parts availability, something that, keep the cost down for a teen. These types of lists 5, 8, 10 years ago, you're not going to see an SUV on it, because for us, it was the stability control, availability of stability control, and a tip over and such. So it just goes to show that as much as people talk about old days with cars, like now we're recommending that a teenage driver, a new driver, can have an SUV because of the safety features. But to Brian's point, nothing too clumsy, not a Tahoe, a pickup truck. That's a key thing I think parents should keep in mind and try to impress upon their children. My car, I grew up with I had an 87 Toyota Celica GT Coupe. I couldn't afford the GTS. I certainly couldn't afford a Celica all-track turbo. They were wishful thinking. I think I was able to put bigger wheels and a spoiler on the back. I was able to buy that, and it was a great car. And like Ryan said, mine was front wheel drive, but again, manual, no ABS, no stability control. I learned about tire grip quickly when I went straight in a turn and between two trees, thankfully, not into one of them at a young age. But, it made me appreciate driving the same type of way. And I had to drive a stick. I had to learn to drive a stick because my dad had a 65 Corvette in the garage. My goal was I had to drive it, and I wasn't going to be able to learn on that. So I learned to stick on a much easier hydraulic clutch than a spring clutch with a Hurst 4-speed.
So actually, of all the guys on the panel today, my kids are actually of driving age, and my oldest son wanted to drive a manual transmission. I mean, he's just like falling right in line with the rest of us here. And he has a 2015 Honda Civic Si. And so I was thinking if he was going to pick a car from the list that the IIHS and Consumer Reports put out, he would probably go for a Mazda 3, just like you said, Ryan, or maybe a different Honda Civic. I mean, he's definitely got the jonesing of working the clutch and the manual transmission. And what's interesting is, like, when I was growing up, my dad bought a demo, a 1980 Ford Fiesta, and it was a lot less expensive because it was a demo, and it wasn't a real Volkswagen Rabbit, but it was a 4-speed manual, vinyl seats, no air conditioning, and obviously no safety features like they see today. But it was got me through the snows in Connecticut, and it was a good little runner. Although the body seemed to be made of like absolute tinfoil and would rust just by looking at it. Anyhow, just a reminder, that list is on consumerreports.org, so definitely check it out. So which brings us to our next segment, which is what we're driving at the track this week. We have lined up for you guys the 2021 Chevrolet Trailblazer. This is yet another SUV for buyers to choose from, as if people don't have enough. It's a resurrected nameplate from Chevrolet's past, much like the Blazer made a comeback this year. So John, could you tell us a little bit more about the small SUV?
Yeah, sure. So we bought, like you said, a 2021 Trailblazer LT all-wheel drive. It has 155 horsepower, 1.3 liter turbocharged 3-cylinder engine, 9-speed automatic transmission, and like I said, all-wheel drive. It cost MSRP, so the manufacturer's suggested retail price, $25,600. To that, we really only got one option, $965 convenience package, automatic climate, a larger touchscreen, 8-inch touchscreen, satellite radio, rear charger, USB charging points. We also got rear parking sensors, blind spot, and rear cross traffic warning. Those were optional. With destination of $995, we spent $27,560. This is, it's kind of a new class. They're squeezing in more, manufacturers squeezing in more and more vehicles into these little niches. You have the Chevrolet Trax, is small subcompact SUV, and then they have the Equinox, a compact SUV. So you think like, oh, okay, Well, no, now they're slotting the Trailblazer in between. There's this tweener of the tweeners, competes with Honda's HR-V, the Jeep Renegade, Kia Seltos. It's a corporate cousin of the Buick's Encore GX. So kind of the badge engineering in a sense that GM had done for years. You have two vehicles sharing a platform, but the Buick is the more luxurious one. A little nicer inside and out. The reason why we got the LT trim, the second level up, brings a power driver's seat. It brings heated seats. The base engine on both the cars, the Buick and the Trailblazer, is a 1.2 liter turbocharged engine with the CVT, continuously variable transmission. But when you go for all-wheel drive, you get moved up to the more powerful 1.3 liter.
Okay, excellent. I mean, we've had some time to drive this car. Put it through a lot of its paces, and Ryan, that's really where you're coming in right now. What's it like to drive?
It's actually it's quite boring to drive. This car is it's very it's a little SUV. It's very car based. It feels like a car, but you're a little higher off the ground. It's all wheel drive, but it feels and drives like a front wheel drive car. The steering's a little vague. It's just boring to drive. It's small, so it's a nice little runabout car. There's actually a fair amount of room in the car. it will serve its purpose, but it's just, like we were just talking about, these manufacturers keep cutting these little, another slice of the pie, putting these other cars in between. It's hard to just separate them because they're very, it's only a hair bigger than that one and a hair smaller than that one, and it's like they just have no personality, I think. But driving it around, I think a lot of people were a little discouraged with the powertrain too. The motor doesn't sound great, and then it kind of shudders a little bit. It's just a little buzzy, just a bit of road noise. I don't have a lot of great things to say about it, unfortunately. I sound like I'm hammering it, but it's not a bad little car, but it's got some vices for sure.
No, that's all right. I mean, that's what we do here at Consumer Reports. We talk about the good and the not so good, and you think about comparing the last Trailblazer that we tested, which was it was much bigger. It had really sloppy handling, weak brakes, like a lousy 13 miles per gallon overall. And you think that, well, the bar was pretty low there. So we're hoping that the GM is thinking about this and is going to turn out that the new Trailblazer is going to be definitely a step ahead of the last one, right?
I found it interesting with this is much like Ryan said. It's a nondescript vehicle, and it is a great runabout. It was a fine runabout. But it's one of the vehicles that you see with such styling to give it some presence that, view at the front was fine, the view to the left was fine. But in a parking lot, my over the right shoulder view it's really, really bad because there was a combination of passenger headrest, kind of B pillar, the second roof pillar. Then you get this big C almost rear roof pillar final cluster and the rear head restraint for the passenger rear head restraint, and it just blocks the whole side. And it's just one of those things where if it's an urban car, because that's a lot of what people it's an urban city car, but it's not really made very well for tight situations in that respect of looking over your right shoulder. You end up really relying on either setting the mirror properly, which I know a lot of people will comment and say, you have to set the mirrors and that's the key thing. Sure, setting the mirrors is key, but you shouldn't really have to overcome a poor design by setting the mirrors in a key way. So the big screen for the rear camera, the backup camera, and the mirror is going to really have to work to compensate for that compromised view. It's interesting. That's a $26,000 vehicle, and it's kind of meh. That's what we see with a lot of this. They're trying to keep price points down, but it results in kind of maybe a used car is a lot better decision.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, John, about the size, because if you think about something that's small, you'd hope that the visibility would be good because it's not this huge hulking vehicle. But I agree. When I drove it, I definitely felt more enclosed, and the visibility was limited, and that just seems like a strange thing when it comes to a vehicle of that size. Compared to say something like a Subaru Forester, which is a little bit bigger, but definitely has much superior visibility.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And there's a lot of cars in the segment now, so it's a tough playing ground. So you can't come in here with a so-so vehicle, in my opinion.
Now, as you guys said, there's so many of these slicing and dicing. There isn't any room for mediocrity. Now, we're not going to obviously let the cat out of the bag. We're still wrapping up our final test results of the Trailblazer, so we'll have to see where it comes out when we're done. But definitely check back to Consumer Reports later this month, and we'll have full test results. Those are available to Consumer Reports members. So definitely check it out if you're in the market. So we're going to move on to questions, and we get a ton of them. We love it. We wish we could answer them all. We just can't get to them all, but we really like for you to keep them coming, both text and video questions, to talkingcars@icloud.com. That's talkingcars@icloud.com. First up is a video question. This is Sean from Pensacola.
Hey, Talking Cars. I'm a big fan of the show. I drive currently a 2009 Toyota Highlander. It has about 230 to 240,000 miles. I'm not exactly sure. It's still in great condition. I love the car, but when I do replace it, I'm thinking about getting the new Venza. I was wondering when you would get a Venza and when the report might be available. And I was also wondering how it compares to the RAV4 Prime, because both of those cars are top of my list. Big fan of the show. Thank you for everything.
Okay, so let's start with Ryan. What do you think of Sean's alternatives with the Venza or the RAV4 Prime?
So those are two really nice vehicles. I would pick the Venza personally. It has more of a a Lexus feel to it. It's like a little heavier. It has there's more substance to it. I think it rides a little better. They're both hybrids, Toyota hybrids, so they're both going to be, from what we've learned, very reliable. And what I think is the best hybrid system out there in terms of just drivability. They're just great to drive. The Venza just has a little more heft to it. I think it's, the RAV4 is a very nice car too, but it's thinner. It doesn't have that substance to it. The quality just doesn't feel like it's as high as the Venza. I think the Venza, you almost get into a Lexus in a way without paying for a Lexus. So that'd be my choice.
Excellent. John, what do you suggest?
So the first thing I thought is Sean, it's good that he's not buying immediately. He's looking down the road, because right now the primes are hard to find. They're only importing 5,000. I think we talked about this on previous episodes of Talking Cars. You're seeing basically MSRP sticker price at best. So, no matter what you're doing, putting it off and at least having the prices potentially come down is a good thing. I am personally not a RAV4 fan from the redesign. I don't like the way it's styled. I don't like the space. It doesn't work for me. Think of it this way: the Prime's smaller than your Highlander. The styling compromises ingress and egress, getting out of it, in and out of it, and headspace. So that's something to consider. If you do get the Prime, you will be able to take advantage of the federal tax credit of $7,500. If you do pay taxes, you'll be able to lessen your tax burden that way. You have to pay back. So you'll have to play with your earnings and what you declare and how much you withhold if you want to take advantage of that. You will also have to drive the car on electric power to really maximize the price difference between something like a RAV4 hybrid, for example, or the Highlander hybrid, or the Honda CR-V hybrid, which I think would be better choices. If you like a RAV4, I would go with the CR-V hybrid personally. I think the size works it's a little bit more like a midsize SUV without going to that full space. If you do like your Highlander, you can get the Highlander in front wheel drive. So a little less expensive than all-wheel drive. Since all the hybrids are all just really electric motors driving the rear wheels, it's not like it's a real weight penalty for someone in the Sun Belt to go with a hybrid like it used to be, where you have a drive shaft and, all kinds of extra weight that you're carrying around as a penalty. So, look, if you like the Highlander, I would suggest going with the front-wheel drive Highlander hybrid or all-wheel drive if you want, or the CR-V hybrid, the Honda CR-V hybrid. It's a right size. They're going to probably, I think they'll satisfy you a little bit more, and you won't be paying a premium price like you will with the Venza or the RAV4 Prime.
Excellent. It's funny because if I was going to be talking to Sean about this, the first question that I would ask is perhaps, would you consider just holding on to the Highlander that you have? I mean, these vehicles are known to last a really long time, and maybe you just get some more miles and more years out of it, and because dollar for dollar, that's probably the least expensive way to go. But if you're aching for a new car, and we're car people here, so we understand, maybe you just hold on to it and keep driving it if it's not costing you a lot of money every month. Excellent. Okay, so next we've got Alex from Phoenix. And Alex writes, my wife and I have a 2018 Honda Pilot all-wheel drive, and one front OEM tire formed a crack on the sidewall at about 28,000 miles in. We took it to our favorite shop to have the two front tires replaced. We were informed that because the vehicle was an all-wheel drive, that all the tires needed to be replaced, even though the rear tires had some life left on them. They said, had the vehicle been front-wheel drive, it would have been okay to replace just the two. So would Talking Cars help explain why all-wheel drive cars need all four replaced like this? So Alex, you are in luck because Ryan, one of our CR tire experts, just happens to be available to give you an answer. So Ryan, what can you tell Alex?
So I guess it's kind of unfortunate, but this does happen, and this is a real thing. I think some people, the dealer will tell them, or their shop will tell them this, and they almost, think they're getting, swindled or something. But so what happens is with an all-wheel drive car, you have potentially all the wheels can receive power from the engine, which means they're all connected in some way, depending on the manufacturer and how the car is, built. The wheels are all connected in some way. So if you can imagine, if they're all connected and one wheel is slightly smaller than the other three wheels, it's going to spin at a different speed, which is going to bind up or can bind up the drivetrain, the differentials, different parts, and actually, make them fail prematurely. Subaru is notorious for this. Subaru claims they have one of the best all-wheel drive systems, and we would even say they do. But it's very common when you have you get one flat tire and you're maybe 3/4 worn. You have to put in the new tire on there. They tell you have to put all 4 on. There is an option where you can buy a tire from Tire Rack. If you buy it from them, they'll shave the tire down. I know this sounds crazy. You're going to take a brand new tire and actually shave it down to match the same amount of tread depth on the other tires, assuming it's the exact same tire, because that's key as well. And to get yourself out of that pinch. In Alex's case, I mean, I don't know where his tires were wear wise, but and they are right. If it was front wheel drive, you could buy 2 tires and. Which we don't really recommend. You can do that. What we recommend is to rotate your tires so that they wear evenly at all 4 positions, so you can avoid that in the first place. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's just the nature of an all-wheel drive vehicle. Every manufacturer has a different spec for what they allow, the tolerance of what how worn one tire can be as opposed to the other. Either way, you always replace 2 tires on an axle at the same time. You should always do that, and they should always be the same tire, same model, manufacturer, and all. That's it, unfortunately. But
well, Alex from Phoenix, good luck with this, and sorry for the bad news, but that's the way it goes. Our next and final question is Hank from San Francisco. Hank writes, Elon Musk is jokingly tweeting that the Cybertruck will be the official truck of Mars. What's yours? Mine is the Toyota Land Cruiser 70, the one available for the lucky Australians, but not here in America. Sad face. Okay, so Hank from San Francisco is going all cyber on us, and so John, do you have kind of an out of this world choice for the vehicle of Mars?
Kind of apropos question, given that there's a number of missions being launched to Mars from different nations, right around this summer of 2020. I spent a lot more time thinking about this than the other questions, as you could tell.
I did too.
But seriously, so the first thing is it can't be too big. You gotta, it's payload. You gotta lift it and get it to Mars. Okay, so as much as the Mercedes-Benz G65 AMG 6-wheel all-wheel drive SUV would be cool, or something crazy like what was shown last year, Audi's AI Trail concept. Check out the images. It's a pretty cool looking vehicle. I'd go with a modified version of the Ferox Azaris 6-wheeled off-road vehicle. And it's basically like it's basically a single person vehicle, like a glorified, Can-Am car, Can-Am Spider type of thing, and again, you see the image, but I figured it would be lightweight. It would need a roof of some type of course, but the lightweight would mean it would be easier to get there. It wouldn't take up as much payload on the rocket, but also it would be able to kind of float over the different terrain, whether it's sand, whether it's rock, boulders. 6 wheels, lots of articulation in the suspension, quick, because a lot of open space to cover, during exploring. Or maybe the Lamborghini LM002, just for some reason.
So, kind of a silly question, get some silly answer. No, actually, really kind of funny. Ryan,
that's good.
Best car for Mars, go.
So, because we're going there, and we don't have, we need to be able to haul stuff around, and we're new to this place. I would get a late '80s, early '90s Mercedes-Benz Unimog. Okay. It holds like 2 people. It's got a nice big bed. The tires are enormous. It's just like the ultimate everything vehicle. I think it just does it all, and you don't know what we're going to run into up there. So that's my choice.
Oh man, great choices. Definitely out of the ordinary. I'm kind of boring. I'm just going with the Toyota Tacoma. There doesn't seem to be any evidence on this earth that the vehicle can ever be stopped. So with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of Talking Cars. As always, check the show notes for more information on the vehicles and the topics that we talked about. Keep those questions coming to talkingcars@icloud.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.